Greetings and welcome to In Depth. I'm Dike Rostant. We are having a conversation with Curtis Graham, who some may better know as the persona Lady Mahogany. We aim to get some of his life and career, as well as his recently completed documentary. Hello, sir, how you do? Thank you so much for joining
I'm
us.
good.
And
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
the pleasure is ours because, and I even want to call the name of Ms. Lashley, who would have forecasted, hey, we need to have this conversation. So thank you very much, Glendora. But I want to ask, though, who is Lady Mahogany?
Well, Lady Mahogany was a fictional character, and pretty much she was created for the main purpose of entertainment, and I would say business. That the business part of it came pretty much in the later run, and it was really strong. Um, it came in the form of gender illusion, and some would say, I would say, in the art form of drag queen. That you have drag queen as the umbrella, and under that, I did female impersonations and celebrity impersonations.
Okay, well, and take me through a
She
little bit,
also,
and even before we go a little further, because, and I'm very grateful that you're speaking about umbrella and then speaking to different levels. If you were to make differences or to explain it a little more full for me, thank you. So, do you see, or is there a difference between saying drag queen versus female impersonator versus celebrity impersonation?
yeah, there are some differences, of course. So, for female impersonation, sometimes, and in the early days when I started off in this, we would say female impersonation because at that time we were doing the illusion, the gender illusion, and it was basically to become as feminine as possible. The crossover was to be as feminine as possible. So that's what we would call female impersonation. Celebrity impression, of course, speaks for itself. Yes, you're impersonating a celebrity, so you have to look like the person and perform like the individual. And drag queen now is an extreme, exaggerated form of female impersonation. And in some parts of the world, drag queens, you would see that they would not have the bosom, they would not have the breastplates. Sometimes they would dress and they would not do the tucking and stuff like that. So, and they do the exaggeration. The costume is very elaborate, um, and the makeup itself is very, very, very intense and intricate. So that is in the later stage we started to call that drag. So it was an extreme version of the female impersonation, and it takes on variations. It takes on very variations. It all depends on the person who is trying to um, create the illusion.
Again, you a little earlier, speaking to Lady Mahogany, you said there were aspects of business, there were aspects of, I think, self-expression. But do you
Yes.
see, or where are some of those intersections in terms of where you have Lady Mahogany intersecting with Curtis Graham? And this is in possibly personal identity, possibly artistic vision. Where do you see some of those points?
You know, when I started off in this business, I really wanted to keep it separate. I didn't want to intertwine it, for certain reasons. Because for professional reasons, when you're out in the market, I didn't want to be, the stigmatization of people thinking you want to become a female and stuff. And it was really more a business aspect for me. So I try to keep it separate. I kind of separated the two. So myself and what I did, it was separate. And then what I did for Lady Mahogany was for me strictly business entertainment.
All right, and
So
this
I
is
really didn't try to, yeah.
no, sorry, this is the second time you said when you started. So give me an idea when was that?
I started in the early 90s. When I started, it was probably 1992. And really and truly, I went to support a friend. A friend was doing the screening for Miss Cover Girls. And I know I said Miss Queen of Queens, but that was a mistake. But it was Miss Cover Girls International. And they were doing the screening. And I went to support a friend. And while I was there, the person who was doing the screening said, well, I would like to have your friend on board to do this. And I said, well, not me. I'm not really into that, you know. And a little later on, my friend was like, come on, you could do it, you could do it, you could do it. And, kind of convinced me to get involved in it. I had no clue what I was really getting myself involved. Because at one point they called me the construction man. I didn't know how to. It's an art form. You have to learn. It's something you have to learn. You couldn't just go and put on. Well, these days it's easier for some, but in that time it's something you had to learn. You had to learn the artistry of makeup, how to do wigs, how to, the construction of the body and all these different things.
And with that though, because I think everyone has experiences growing in their career. There may be some people
Yes.
who try to implement that crab in a barrel, pull you down before you really know, okay, the construction of this, how it is you're applying this, how it is the artistry, as you say. But there will be some people who give you pointers along the way, some people who lift you up. Who are some of those people for you?
In the early, I have to give credit who is deceased to Matthew Crawford. I wouldn't have been, the Lady Mahogany wouldn't have been where she is and what she did had it not have been for that person. So Matthew Crawford was one of the inspirations for me and the pioneer who started my career somewhat. Um, and then I would also say we had a few other people who had looked to, people like Godfrey Seeley, Richard Young, and those names. And though when I started to come out into the business, and I would see what they would do and at what levels they were doing stuff, and I said to myself, I think that if I want to do more, that is where I want to go in the business, in the art form and do something more about it. And then I got the opportunity to go to St. Martin.
I'm glad you mentioned St. Martin because I wanted to start to speak about the documentary, but let's talk about St. Martin. We have about 2 minutes before we take that break. Talk to me a little bit about St. Martin, thank you.
Oh boy, what can I say? It's a beautiful island. It's a very touristic. The main source of revenue is tourism. And let me tell you, when I arrived there in 93, I was blown away because I did not know beforehand. When I knew I was going to St. Martin, I went and looked it up. I said, but I never heard of St. Martin in the 90s. And then you saw this little tiny, tiny, tiny dot that was not hardly ever visible on the atlas because we didn't have internet in those times. So I didn't have Google. So we went and looked at it. I was like, that piece of rock I going on. But listen now. That little piece of rock blew my mind. I arrived there and it was everything you saw in the movies for a tourist island in terms of the shipping industry, the people from North America coming in there all the way, people are coming in from Europe, the mass amount, it was really the resorts, the friendliness of the people, and then the entertainment part of it. And that is what had caught my eye when I started to see the different types of entertainment and the productions that was going on that island.
How long were you going for originally?
We were supposed to be in St. Martin for over the Easter holidays, and that was supposed to be like a 3 or 4 day period, and that turned into 2 weeks, which I think I had lost. I thought I was going to lose my job, and then I came back to Trinidad and I had a proposal, and I took it. I took it right away because as soon as I arrived in Trinidad, my mind was like I never left St. Martin. So when I got that opportunity and they tossed me that bone, to tell me to come back to St. Martin and do certain things. I took it. And I remember my boss said, Curtis, all that glitter is not gold, all that glitter is not gold. And I said, I go in and seek my future.
And I want to talk about that a little bit because the question I want to ask, I don't want it to chinks on it. So I'll ask it in the other half of the conversation. Thank you. We're speaking with Curtis Graham, the person behind the persona Lady Mahogany. Stay with us. We'll return after this. Welcome back. We are speaking with Curtis Graham, the creative behind the persona Lady Mahogany. And all that glitters is not gold, Curtis. Be careful. I know, because, and this speaks to even like Paul Keynes Douglas. He would talk about parents want the children to be something ending with a So lawyer, a doctor, teacher. He said that's why he's a storyteller. But saying that you are going to seek your future, what are some of those things that you had to rest to the side or outright throw out of the door to get this thing within you to say, no, this is where I'm going forward, and I'm going forward like this?
I believe the universe made that decision for me outright. Somehow, the Curtis Graham within that time frame knew that there was something more for me. I said this was my time, this was my moment to take the decision to follow whatever that was. I didn't know what it was going to be honest with you. I was just playing with it. I had one foot inside and one foot outside because I wasn't too sure. And I was also very, very nervous as to what would happen to me. In terms of, it wasn't a hard decision because at that time I had left. When it comes for family, like most people say, they don't want to leave their family, But in that time, our family was was broken. My dad and I wasn't seeing eye to eye because, even for this reason, when I thought that I was gay, he couldn't handle that. So we had parted ways, and then my sister and I was kind of separate. So it wasn't a difficult choice. And then I was working, yes, but then you're working, but you're not really earning anything more than just paying bills day by day. So it wasn't a hard decision to make to jump to go to St. Martin. Because when I saw the US, I saw it was US, and I was like, okay, I got eye struck. I say, something. I believe I gotta go and give this a try.
Okay, and so it's one thing to give it a try. It is another thing to try to build your career. Where along the road or where along the journey did you have the idea, I want to make a documentary?
Well, the documentary came, I've been doing, I did drag for over 30 something years. And after the hurricane and stuff recently, it became very difficult to continue. And with aging, I put on a lot of weight, and then I had some health complications. So all those factors started to weigh in terms of my performances and stuff on stage. And I had decided that I knew within my heart and my soul that it was coming to an end. So after the Hurricane Irma, there was no business in terms of that with entertainment, and that sort of solidified. And that's, like I said, the straw that broke the camel's back. And I knew after that it was over. And in that time, I decided, well, what I'm going to do with all this material that I had sitting in my hard drive for so long. And then when my friend from Canada sent me that documentary, Divas Forever or Love Me Forever, I said, that a light bulb came up in my head, and I said, that is what I really wanted to do. I didn't know what I was getting myself involved in here again. And my friend, I'm very headstrong. So I would jump into something and then figure out, oh my God, look what I've got myself into. But I don't back out. I may not be the best swimmer, but I will swim and give it my best shot.
And that's one of the things
Yes.
I am even trying to remind myself on a daily basis. Many times it's not necessarily the person who has possibly the most talent or the most aptitude for something, as opposed to the person who is able to exercise a level of resilience and say, okay, I'm going to continue, and just putting one foot in front of the other. But in terms of putting one foot in
Right.
front of the other, we're looking at the 22nd of July. So what's happening now?
Well, great. Something, it was really a little bit of a struggle because we thought we had it in the bag, and then when I arrived here, the planning had fallen flat. And thank God to Uncle Cyrus from Bohemia, Trinidad, Nikolai Attire, and these organizations, which is CAISO and the Trans Coalition. In this last minute, they came together and championed my project, and we are able to get it to the screen at the CAISO Blues Cafe on Ryston Road in Port of Spain, and it's showing on the 22nd, which is a Tuesday. That's the only day we could have really gotten within the time frame I'm here in Trinidad. So we're running with it. We're doing it, and it starts at 7 p.m. on the 22nd at Kaiser Blues Cafe on Ryston Road.
Okay, and there is a name that's been mentioned, Sage Williams. What has that person's role in the project been?
I wanted to specifically make mention because with all the obstacles and the hurdles that I've had doing this documentary, this person, it wouldn't have made possible because of this person. Sage William is a gorgeous young individual. She had just come out of school and she was looking for something to do. And I took her on board for the project, and she did the trailer. Now, this inspiration also came around the COVID period, speaking with a friend of mine, Jeffrey Surratt. Jeffrey Surratt, within this time now, has passed away. So I have had to pay tribute to him within the documentary, because in that conversation, and that's what I'm saying, conversation has power. Because in the conversation, we were talking about for the many, many years that so many people did stuff uh, within the queer culture. There's no documentation and archiving, which is there's some archiving now due to Uncle Cyrus and Nikolai, and now you have make mention of people who've done stuff over the years, but there's hardly any visibility. And I would think that the documentation is where that will come back, my documentary, where there's more visibility in terms of talking about certain things, and you could see certain things happening.
It's one thing to say you're headstrong, it's another thing to say you will jump in and swim. That doesn't mean that the way is always smooth sailing. What were their challenges? What was the process like? Especially when you said, okay, well, yes, you have this thing in a hard drive, but you never really set out to do a documentary originally.
Well, let me tell you something. This human life in itself creates challenges. And number one, we had to get the finance. That was one, because I didn't realize how expensive this venture was going to become. And much as I was going to pull money out of my pocket, I didn't want to become broke after I done do the documentary. So we did a GoFundMe, and like I said, I thank everybody who has contributed to the GoFundMe. So after doing the GoFundMe and whatever personal funds I added to it, we had to seek editor, videographer, and that was one of the biggest hurdle, was to find someone who would take the project on. And I don't know if it had anything to do with drag queen, but we had interviewed, I had met with about 10 people, and everyone said no. They didn't want to touch it. Most people said that is too much work, you know? So I had knew of someone that decided to take on the project, and that turned into a nightmare. At one point, I thought they had hijacked my project. So we had, that's why it took so long. It ran, he had the project for over a year and plus, and we had to pull the project away from him. And that's where Sage, this person that I mentioned, Sage William, she became my beacon in terms of getting the project finished and to a point where I can use it and put it out in public. And I also have to make mention early when you started, you said Glendora Lashley. She was there from the very beginning, championing my cause and helping everything. She was there with me with the people, setting up PayPal, setting up GoFundMe, and all of that. And I couldn't have done what I did without the help of her as well.
And in the last minute we have, Curtis, what do you hope comes out of this documentary? If it's one thing that people kind of come away from the documentary, what do you hope it is?
Well, many things. While I was doing this, I didn't realize what really I was putting my hands on. And then, I didn't realize that this documentary was going to be an advocate for change, that we could change our mindsets. Too many times, gay people die and their legacies is just tossed under the carpet, burnt, and stuff like that. And I want people to realize that sometimes we make a dent in this world and we need to be recognized as well. So I want families to honor the people who in their families who have done stuff and not shy away. Because I've seen it happen. I've seen it happen to my best friend, where he died and all of his stuff that he did was just burnt and tossed. All these memorable moments, all the stuff that of life for all the years that this person did. They didn't want any part of that, and they're not, and I don't blame them because they don't understand it. But if every time that happens, what happens is that our 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 culture sort of dies when every time family keep doing that. So in this ways of visibility to show people, some of the struggles. I'm documenting my legacy, but with the hope of also to changing mindsets.
Right, and we want to thank you for the work that you're doing.
And highlighting individuals and also highlighting people who have paved the way before us.
Because Shadow says that everybody is somebody, nobody is nobody. And I get that is the kind of energy I get from what it is you're saying as well. Curtis Graham, thank you very much for the time that you've shared with us. And on behalf of everyone, this has been In Depth with me, Dike Rostant. Thank you so much for tuning in.